Welcome to AI Month 2023. My name is Petra Vorsteher and I'm co-founder of AI Hamburg, and I have the great pleasure to welcome you to an exciting day with 7 amazing panels and 23 expert speakers. I hope, of course, you will join us for all of them. Our session now is how the investment management industry is embracing AI-based textual approaches for decision-making. This is an exciting topic, and I will pass you now to our moderator, Fred Sage, who will introduce our panelists to you.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Fred Sage, your moderator for this session, focused on the application of artificial intelligence in the investment management industry, a fast-growing trend within the global asset and wealth management industry. Investment strategies managed by AI, passive and active, is an innovation, but it is not transforming the industry. It is not having an AI automation impact, putting investment teams out of work. It is simply an option for investors as to how their money can be managed. This session features 3 speakers who will share their practical experiences regarding how they're using AI-based textual tools and methods to enhance investment decision-making. Please welcome Eric from Akatis.
Good morning. Hi, Fred. So do you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So let's dive together in the world of asset management and investing. We at Akatis, we invest into companies that are listed on the stock market. And my task is to select companies to invest into using AI. So just for avoiding a misunderstanding, we are not looking for companies that use or develop AI to improve their products, but we apply AI ourselves to select companies for our portfolio. And today I'm going to briefly sketch our US equity fund, which has a very unique feature because all investments are made by AI, entirely by AI, without any human intervention. And in this process of making investment decisions, AI text-based tools play a very important role for us, in particular in the reduction of risk. And I'm going to show you later on what I mean with that. But since today we cover a broad range of different areas, let me just try to give you an idea why it is very challenging of using AI in asset management. The biggest challenge is that financial markets are not stationary. So simply put, stationary means that properties do not change over time. Okay, so properties stay constant. Yet financial markets are not stationary, but on the contrary, they change their behavior over time. And that is for us a big challenge, because at the core of our efforts is the assumption that we are finding patterns in the markets that existed in the past and that can be exploited in the future. But that only works if they still exist. The second challenge is that the amount of historical data is very limited. So the most usual or the most obvious solution in finance is you take price data or volume data and move to very short time periods. Okay, and by moving to the scale of, let's say, days, hours, minutes, or even seconds, you can get a lot of price ticks, and this increases your amount of data. But if you do so, you are in the space of trading. We at Akatis, we take a very, very different approach. So we don't use price data at all, but only fundamental data. What is fundamental data? So every listed company has to publish its financial results. These come in the form of a balance sheet, of an income statement, or cash flow statement. And the numbers you find there, like revenue, debt, or profits, are the numbers we use. That's it. So we look at the financials of a company and at the business itself, independently of the stock price. And that is what I am referring to as investing. But if we use only this data, we are stuck with at most 4 data points per year. So we are really in an environment where we have not much data. Good. So at Arcartis, we have a long time value vision. And here there's a sketch of how a typical value investor works. So he studies financial statements, he reads the news, and he talks to experts. And then he uses all this information, processes the information, and hopefully come up with a long-term investment idea, like, for example, Coca-Cola. And our goal now is to imitate the human brain by AI. And our solution to that is a 2-step process. In the first step, we have what I now call our AI fundamental stock picker, which uses only fundamental company data as a source and has the task to predict an attractiveness score for each company. And then we're coming to the topic of today. In the second step, we have what I call now AI textual based safety net, where we use text data to spot red flags in company filings and management discussions. I'll come to an example later on. So just to give you a very quick overview of how the first step works, the AI stock picker, there are several industry branches, and we zoom into a single one. Like, let's take the IT sector as an example, where you have companies like Microsoft, Intel, Nvidia, or Apple. And then we construct all possible pairs of these companies and let them compete with each other in a supervised setup. And this comparison is, as I mentioned earlier, entirely based on the fundamental numbers of the companies, while the task of the model is to identify the likely future winners over a long time period. And at the end, we end up with a ranked list of companies for each industry. That's easy. Now let's come to the second step, our AI-based safety net, what I call a safety net. And obviously, text data is not a new source of information, but it is used since a very long time. However, the way we can analyze text data nowadays has changed dramatically. In the US, the most famous financial report is the so-called 10K, which is filed once a year, and you can find a lot of information in it, such as the structure of the company, the financial statements, the executive compensation. And on the right here, you see the number of words used in a single 10K file or 10K document over time. And as you can see, in the last 3 decades, the length of these files more than tripled to 60,000 words per document. So when a company files his results, it's a text document which typically has about 60,000 words in it. So for a human, it's almost impossible to digest all this information without an automated text analysis tool. And here are the 2 tools we are using. First, we perform a machine learned tone or sentiment analysis of a company specific text, which is called an earnings call. This is a conference call during which the management of a company presents the latest results, followed by a Q&A with analysts. And in particular, the Q&A with analysts is very interesting for us because the questions that are asked, they can be forward-looking, whereas the presentation so far will always be backward-looking, referring to the numbers of the last year. And on top of that, management is not prepared for the questions, though they have to react spontaneously. And the nice thing about these conference calls is they are recorded and transcribed. So, and then we can later on use standard text analysis tools to determine the sentiment of this call. The second tool we use is a technology of Bedrock AI, which uses large language models to train against real-world events which are related to fraud, lawsuits, or some kind of malfeasance. So it's kind of a forensic tool, and as a result, we get a risk score which assesses the likelihood of a downside outcome related to the quality of earnings and fraud. And I just give you one example of how this text tool kicks in. So this is a company called Dentsply Sirona, which is a US dental equipment manufacturer. And just to get a sense for the company, on the right, you see in blue its revenue growth over several years, and in green the operating profit. And it looks like a reasonable company. It's growing, not much, but it's growing over several years. And actually, our AI stock picker proposed that we should invest into this company. But then we got a red flag from our AI tool, AI text tool, and red flag always means rejection. Okay, don't invest into this company. And let's have a look what the AI text tool actually found in the documents. So here I have an excerpt from the latest financial report, and the company tells you that for the previous year, the numbers they published were not correct. So they had to modify the numbers of the previous year. And on top of that, in the second part, the person responsible for that, the CFO, resigned. And this is one of the most troubling news you can imagine to get as an investor, because you can't trust the numbers you're getting from the company. And this is a perfect example where the AI text trader or AI text safety net came forward and saved us from investing in a company that might have issues. I mean, it's possible that it's just a small error and that the company will show an impressive increase in its share price in the future, but we try to minimize the risk. And a company that looks fishy is simply excluded in our approach. So for us, it's really crucial to get this text signal because it uses information that cannot be inferred from the fundamental data alone, because the fundamental data had these wrong numbers. And he actually did a great job. Just to finish, so we usually have around 50 positions in our portfolio, which are all from the US or from Canada, and they are all proposed by the AI model and passed this text filter. And I just give you a number of the companies here to get an impression. And you see many of them are really well familiar to you, like Microsoft, Netflix. So these are companies that don't look so. I mean, the message is though the machine does not deliver only strange companies. So you get a portfolio which looks really reasonable and you can feel safe about. And that's it. I just give you a short summary. So I briefly will give you a very, very fast overview of our long-term company picking AI model, fund, which works without any human intervention. The only thing I do is the trading at the end. So I send the orders to the broker. Our AI model is based entirely on fundamental data, but on top of that, we have a safety net by using AI text tools to detect potentially distressed companies from their earning calls or from their filings. And at the end, we get a long-only sector-neutral portfolio with about 50 US Canadian stocks. And with that, Fred, I'm giving back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Emmanuel, do you have any questions for Eric?
No, I find the model interesting. It'd be interesting to know what language model is used on the risk models on the news flow side.
I can give you the answer for the first one for analyzing the earning calls. So it's a modification of the BERT model. So it's not the latest one. I think BERT appeared like 3 or 4 years ago, but then it's adapted and tuned for the financial application. It's FinBERT.
Cool, great. Yeah, so actually I can discuss a bit about that. You want me to present Fred? And because I think we can almost leave from that.
Yeah, that's fine. So I have no questions for you, sort of given the time. Emmanuel,
Yep.
please welcome Emmanuel from RAM AI.
Thanks a lot, Fred. So maybe a few words on RAM. So we are a couple $1 billion asset manager, so a boutique based in Geneva, Switzerland. We manage strategies in fixed income, multi-asset, and equity space. Our equity funds are AI driven, and I'm very glad to give you an idea of what we do on the AI side. So as quants, basically quantitative fund managers, our work is very much to try to find inefficiencies in the market, identify attractive stock opportunities. So we are a team, so I belong to a team of 5 on the systematic equity side. And we really spend our day trying to make sense of all the information out there. We have, hundreds of data sources of items we can analyze on companies to try predict returns. AI, so deep learning, is very well adapted for that task. And that's why we embrace it at RAM in our process. So the large language models are extremely useful for us for one very good reason is we need them to be able to look at unstructured data, so text data, like earnings call transcripts or like news flow. Unstructured means not in tabular numbers format, so you basically need something that helps you represent that text, this sequence of words in a sentence, and can make sense of it. Large language models have gone through a bit of a revolution around 5 years ago. So we just discussed, so BERT was released in 2018. It's very much benefited from a new concept in deep learning, and deep learning really works with concepts, trial and error. There's no strong theory underlying it. And that concept was precisely to look at the attention, so helping the model put attention, so focus on the interaction in words in a sequence, right? So in words in the sentence, basically, or in a paragraph. And this idea of attention, of being able to weight this interaction of words together, has revolutionized large language models, has led to a massive improvement of language models in multiple tasks, including translation, including representation of text, including more recently this ChatGPT evolution. So these models have evolved a lot since 18. So BERT, the initial BERT base model had around 100 million parameters. Scaling up these models has worked phenomenally well and has helped us to get better and better models, smarter models, models with more memory, models which now are close to human intelligence in terms of a lot of tasks, so which is quite impressive. So the recent GPT-3 models had around 1,000 times the number of parameters that BERT base had 5 years ago. So you imagine the scale of growth of the models and the data behind it. GPT-4 is supposed to have around 1 trillion parameters. And this helped massively improve the quality of these models. So in finance, obviously, we have a lot of scientists working on trying to build models that understand financial context, that understand the financial text. FinBERT was developed a few years ago, so this was fine-tuned to better understand the context of words in finance, which can be sometimes very different from words elsewhere. Another interesting model, if you want to check it out, is ClimateBERT. It's been a Swiss and German project, and actually one of our collaborators at RAM in the University of Zurich has worked on this project. The idea for ClimateBERT is very well in tune with the current ESG dimension in our market. is looking at carbon-related text by companies and improving the way this model understands, the carbon statements made by companies. The latest model is Bloomberg GPT. So on the financial side, it's not open sourced, so it's not been shared to everyone, but it's trained now with hundreds of billions of words, proprietary to Bloomberg and other public data, and does phenomenally well on many tasks, financially or non-financially related. So the way we use it at RAM is trying to leverage this fantastic technology that understands or represents text much better than before, understand the semantics of text, the meaning of text, to analyze news flow. So we built a pipeline that leverages models to analyze news flow. Just to get to the chase, so we see clearly a value added in exploiting information from news flow with these large language models. Here we represent the improvement we make by adding sentiment from news flow and other large language models embeddings information from news flow. And you see that there's clear value added in this information. The idea for us is to integrate into our process information on the companies not yet reflected obviously in the statements, but not yet reflected usually in analyst estimates either, sometimes not even played by the market yet in terms of price action. So a very attractive new source of information for selection of stocks. Interpretability is a question. So those are very large language models, but just to stress that there are ways we can analyze which words impact the prediction of the models, which words basically contribute to our predictions. And we started doing work on this. Deep learning AI is used then to combine these text signals with all the other signals we have on companies, right? So there are fundamentals, sentiment from analysts, price action, liquidity dynamics on the stocks. So the idea there is we have hundreds of signals on companies every day, and we need to make sense of it, right? To combine them together to try to get a return prediction for each stock and to find the best stocks to invest in. So to do that, we have these hundreds of signals across many families, price-based, sentiment-based, quality, valuations, inputs, and on news flow inputs. And we use the pipeline to integrate all this information. So as I said, this alternative data set news flow is a strong value added. Just a word to say that at RAM, we do a lot of work on customizing the way we use deep learning and customizing networks to our own needs. We see a strong value added of this customization. So here we see the impact of on the portfolio value of a strategy of having a custom network. So this research on better training and having better architectures of deep learning. A few words on implementation. So we implement all this research in a number of strategies. Two emphases. One is a climate strategy. It's very difficult to integrate well this environmental dimension of climate carbon with all the other dimensions of risk returns for the stocks. And we believe AI is very well suited for this. So that strategy was deployed 3 years ago, has an attractive track record, and feels the need for very low carbon transition energy peaks with strong risk-adjusted returns. And it's also deployed in our more return-driven strategies, so where we aim to strongly outperform the market. We deployed in 2020 these text-based features thanks to large language models, and deep learning has become core in our process in 2020. But our strategy in EM, our systematic strategy, has been there for 14 years. We've outperformed the market by 6% annualized in that strategy since launch. And deep learning has helped us to reinforce that in recent years. So we outperformed around 30% in the strategy, the market in the last 3 years. A few comments now to finish, to conclude. It's not just impacting our strategies, AI. I think GPT-4 gets us to a stage where it's impacting our workflows as investment firms. We've already automated the way we integrate governance risk, environmental risk, quite similar to what Eric presented, thanks to GPT-4. So our whole pipeline of looking for controversies on stocks is run by GPT-4 now. And even the engagement we do with firms is written by GPT-4, so fed by this news flow pipeline. and many other aspects of our work is evolving. GPT-4 type models help us better code. It helps us to be faster at coding a new strategy. It helps us to be faster at creating content, monthly comments, and articles. It's tomorrow probably going to change more. In the last days, there's been new projects, every day since GPT-4 was released. Two that I think are worth mentioning. One is AutoGPT, that probably will help us down the road to automate processes. It's a first attempt at an AGI, a general intelligence that can be multitask. And I think it's the draft, the POC for more automation of processes. And also FinChat.io, so interesting new investment analysis assistant released just a week ago that helps also discretionary fund managers to analyze stocks much more systematically. We're very happy to engage with everyone. We publish research on our website, check it out. We interact with different innovation agencies like InnoSwiss and participate broadly. Please engage, please reach out to us. Very happy to engage in our research. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Fred. I think you're on mute, Fred. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, Emmanuel. Daniel, do you have any questions for Emmanuel?
Yeah, so I mean, you said that, I mean, in your entire model, the text-based signals are just a part of it, right? But is there still some human element on top of the text-based signals? Like, because I guess it doesn't get it right all the time, right? That's the thing about machine learning and so on, right? So I'm wondering whether you have any processes in place there.
Of course. So we have around 300 signals on each company, so that we use to predict returns. Out of these 300 signals, the news flow inputs are around a dozen inputs, so to around, it's a bit more than 10 inputs. So they come together with sentiment analytics, with fundamental based inputs, with price-based liquidity inputs, to help us optimally predict returns of stocks and the best performers in the market. The whole process is fully systematic, as described. So then we have a deep learning pipeline that helps us combine all this information together to estimate the most outstanding stocks. And the process is fully automated, systematic, and deployed across our strategies.
Wonderful. Neither you nor Eric had mentioned much about how risk management is integrated into your AI process. Is it fully integrated, or is it sort of is it separate?
So it was a question to
Yeah, I guess for both Eric and Emmanuel.
Sure. So so we have this pipeline on the environmental governance side, so controversy pipeline that is integrated in the process that helps capture risk, like management changes, or could be environmental event on the firm, and this is totally automated in the process. Yeah.
Okay, Eric.
Yeah, so we use the signal from the text analysis as an exclusion for companies that we don't want to invest into, but we're not using. I mean, we're not doing it on a portfolio level. So we don't use AI to optimize the portfolio for some risk. We just use the text signal as a risk measure and try to keep that exposure low.
Okay, Emmanuel, your average holding period?
So it's typically 5 months. It's 4 to 6 months. But the positions are scaled very, very dynamically, depending on the price, fundamental, liquidity dynamics of the stocks.
Okay. One final question: when it comes to climate, and you use this and you extract this text, how is there actually a follow-up that these wonderful words are being executed in the companies in their business?
So we currently have a project with InnoSwiss, the Swiss innovation agency, to actually precisely do that, to try to identify greenwashing. So it's an ongoing project. We're looking at the asymmetry between statements and patents. So probably more research down the road. So be very excited to share when we make progress on that. Yeah.
Okay.
I have two questions, if I might. So you mentioned you use news data. Do you crawl the websites yourself, or do you buy the news data? And then what kind of text sources do you use for the emerging market fund you just showed?
Yeah, so we have a news data provider that provides us news data, so it's well formatted. So we don't have, it's all in English.
Yeah.
So we don't really we can't really crawl. I mean, we can't crawl the whole web. So we have financial news provider, and then we integrate this and now earnings call transcripts based inputs for our EM strategy. And as said earlier by Daniel, so I mean, those inputs are among hundreds of return inputs we have. They don't contribute to a massive amount of our prediction, because you have then ESG data, you have returns, fundamentals, and typically they would stand, they help us on some stocks to cut the position, if there is risk associated to news flow. Some others it will be scaling of positions, but they come together with 300 other inputs. Yeah.
Okay. Fantastic. So, excuse me. Just to be clear, Daniel, at Solactive, they are not investment managers. They construct a range of indices, but what is unique and interesting is these AI approaches, textual and otherwise, are used both for active investing, such as RAM and Akatis, but also used in passive investing when a firm like Solactive constructs these indices using artificial intelligence, and then there is a manager that is that employs a tracker. Daniel, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Fred. Thanks for having me. So yeah, what you just said, right? We are in the passive space pretty much as an index provider, right? So maybe quickly on Solactive, we're around for some 15 years now. Have offices around the globe and calculate more than 20,000 indices as of now, and they really spread across all asset classes: equity, fixed income, commodities, derivatives, and so on. Today, I would like to focus on equity products, and yeah, what you just said, we face a different problem, but it's kind of similar, right? We want to get more information on companies using NLP or AI more generally. And for that, we have a tool called Artis that we use to create thematic indices in the end. So we try to identify companies that are active in a certain field. And for that, we use NLP. So why are we doing this? Maybe I start there. If we look at how this traditionally is done, we would take something like a sector classification to identify certain companies. So let's say we would like to do something on electric vehicles. We would go to one of the sector classifications, and all the big data providers have some. And we would look for a sector that is called electric vehicle manufacturers, for instance. And then if you're lucky, there is one, and then that's perfect. You take all the companies in there, and you would get exposure to electric vehicle manufacturers in your final product, right? However, the world is more complex today, and it evolved, and there's a lot of new themes. So in more cases than not, you actually end up with not having a sector that fits exactly the theme that you're looking for, right? And in that case, typically back then, you would try to, take companies that produce cars, but invest a lot in R&D just as a proxy, but you get a lot of false positives into your product that maybe are not even active in electric vehicles. So that is one of the issues that we saw. And the other issue is that companies are not just active in one field, right? Companies often have different business lines by now, and they generate revenues not through just one industry in the end. And that really is a problem for us. Like, if we want to create a product on a certain theme, but a company is classified otherwise, then we would not be able to pick up that company. So if we look at the example of Amazon, this is like how Amazon typically is classified. These are different levels of granularity, but on the most granular level, sector classifications would say Amazon is a internet retail company, right? They have their e-commerce platform, and that's how they generate most of their revenues. So that's how it's classified. However, Amazon is also quite a big player in the streaming industry and also in the cloud services industry, right? So if we, for instance, would like to create a product that gives you access to the cloud industry, right? You probably would like to have Amazon in your product. But for us, being a passive company, we have to have rules, right? We cannot just stock pick. We have to find a way of identifying Amazon as a company that's maybe also active in cloud, right? And in fact, if we look at the breakdown of Amazon's revenues, which you can see here on the left-hand side, you would see that, okay, there's online stores, right? And in fact, that's kind of the internet retail part, and that's most of the revenues that Amazon generates. So fair enough, it's classified as internet retail. But there's also AWS, where they make 15% of their revenue, so that's significant, right? And then AWS is their cloud services business line in the end. And with that 15% of revenues that they generate from the cloud business, they are the biggest player in the world in the cloud industry. You can see on the right-hand side, there's Azure, there's Google, and so on, but Amazon is the biggest player. So if we would create a product that gives or wants to give you access to the cloud industry, we really would like to have Amazon in there, right? And that is what we want to tackle, and for which we developed that tool, which is Artist. And maybe here quickly, this is kind of the process. You have your theme, right? So stick to the example, cloud computing, and then what we do with our algorithm is we need a description of the theme, right? This is the input to our algorithm. So description in that case would be a list of keywords that describe the theme sufficiently well in order for the machine to understand it, let's say. And then this is the input into Artist, then Artist does the magic, and it gives us back a list of companies that we use as the starting point to create the index then, right? So this is already a list of companies that are only active in cloud computing. And so if we now look into that in more detail, right, like how Artist does that, we have a little front end for that. We also have an API solution for it, but what we typically have to do is we kind of need to determine an observation period, right? Like which data do we want to use? You would like to use a lot of data typically, right? But you also don't want to use very old data because maybe a company is not even active anymore in the theme that you're looking at, right? So there's a trade-off between getting enough data and the actuality of the data. But in the ballpark of using 1 year is what turned out for us to be pretty perfect to find companies. And then, as I just told you, we have this list of keywords that we put together, right? We also have this tool, which is down here, this little word cloud that helps you getting there. So you have your initial guess, right? You know some keywords that are relevant, you put them in, and based on that, Artists will give you additional recommendations of keywords that we might want to add to the search. So once we have all that, we put it in. We send out the query to Artist, and what Artist does now is it goes through a lot of different data points from financial news over annual filings, press releases of companies, the earnings call transcripts that Eric just talked about, and also quick, like small business descriptions that for instance, Bloomberg offers and Reuters and so on. And based on all this textual data, it identifies relationships between companies and the query, so the theme that you just put into the system, and it gives you back a list of companies that is ranked according to the relevancy to the theme that you're looking for, right? And what we then can do is we can also like extract that list, obviously, But we can also deep dive into each of these companies. We can understand like where do these hits come from? Why is the company really picked up? Does it really make sense, right? That's basically why I asked Emmanuel just now whether they have a human element to their algorithm. We actually do. We check each of these companies afterwards whether it's really picked up for the right reasons, right? That's kind of important for us, just to make sure that the data is clean. But in most cases, it works pretty well, right? And we get a list of companies that are actually active in cloud computing space. And here we would also get Amazon into our cloud computing product, which is quite significant and important if you want to get access to that or exposure to that market, right? So yeah, that is pretty much Artis in a nutshell, right? So it works especially well with innovative and new themes where there's maybe not a sector yet, or that sector is really small still, right? Because there's a lot of companies that are active in the field, but it's not their primary business line. And in these cases, you really have to have a multidimensional view on a company, right, to understand what they're actually about and what they're doing. And yeah, we use NLP to get that understanding. We go through their texts, we go through the news in order to understand what is the company really about and what is it doing. And thereby we can create products that really get targeted exposure to the investment theme that you're looking for. And yeah, so by now we have more than 100 live products out there, more than $5 billion in assets under management are linked to these products. So it works quite well, and it fills a gap really in the passive investment industry when it comes to thematic investments. Yeah. So that's Artis in a nutshell. That's it.
Thank you, Daniel. I'm going to turn to Emmanuel and Eric to see if they have any questions.
I think it's interesting, and maybe to come back on the comment of checking which names are coming in, having an extra layer. On our side, we try more to interpret what the model does, ensuring that it does what it should do. So taking the right biases in terms of valuations, in terms of growth, in terms of sentiment. But we don't think we add value by ourselves, deciding what comes in or not, and that we don't think it's it's systematic enough that we can have trust in that. So that's why we stick to systematic, and it means we tend to be very diversified in terms of exposure. Yeah.
Maybe just to clarify that, obviously we're not allowed to kick out companies like we want to. It's just if there's an obvious mistake by the machine, then we're allowed to do that. But else, our entire process has to be systematic. That's also why Artis is completely deterministic. So we're not using any machine learning. Because else it already gets difficult for us in terms of regulation and so on for the product.
Eric?
I don't have a question. I've already seen a live demonstration by Daniel earlier, and it's a fantastic tool. Just maybe so actually I'm from an active house, and we often search for companies which work in a certain area on a certain topic, and I just tried this tool out, and it had some fantastic hits which none of the big data providers could point to. So it's really a nice tool.
Wonderful. Daniel, how often are the indices rebalanced? Are the Artis indices?
Yeah, that really depends on the appetite of the client, but generally most indices are rebalanced like on a quarterly or semi-annual basis. So every 3 months or every 6 months.
Okay, I assume just one final comment. It's nice to be able to identify companies that might be in consumer, but you can also put them in another theme category. But then again, for investors, they might feel, well, I'm already exposed to Amazon in my consumer bucket, and now you're giving me now that your wonderful tool is, has said that they can be in another bucket. It could be something, but that's neither here nor there. Just my observation.
If you decide you want to have exposure to e-commerce and cloud, then maybe it makes sense that you overweight Amazon in the end, right?
Exactly. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your participation. Petra and Ragnar, thank you very much for having us. And Petra, I'll let you do the closing.
Thank you very much for the great panel. Thank you, Fred, Daniel, Emmanuel, and Eric. And this is definitely the future of for investments, for investing, and we had you here and to explain it all to us. And we're grateful. And we hope we will see each other again soon. And to the audience, I hope you will join us again at 1 p.m. for Cross-Factory AI Unlocking Synergies in Global Manufacturing Networks. This will be the next panel. Thank you again and have a wonderful day. See you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks.